discuss this Mishmar is in honor of the Dissen's Aliyah, so it's commemorating that occasion, and I believe that unfortunately euphoria erodes and people get bored and they look for new excitement, and we need chizuk. That's part of human nature. We need chizuk, and we came to Eretz Yisroel. We live in Eretz Yisroel. We wouldn't trade it for anything except for going to Chutz La'aretz for vacation, right? How's that for like an interesting statement? So we have over here an issue which I think is important to discuss, and that is the subject of leaving Eretz Yisroel. I would like to start this discussion with a personal family story, which has always been gnawing at me. My father, Zachariash Z, was at a certain juncture in his life, and he was considering coming to learn in Eretz Yisroel. And for a variety of reasons, he wasn't so sure it would work out. And you're not leaving Eretz Yisroel if you came. My father, Zachariash Z, he left home at age 10 to go to yeshiva. This time he was about 19, if I remember correctly. So that's called a big boy. If you left home when you were 10, at 19 you're ready to retire. And he understood if he comes to Eretz Yisroel, it's one way. So if it's one way, so then if you live in Eretz Yisroel, you can't go to Chutz La'aretz. So there's an issur to live to Chutz La'aretz. It's subject we're discussing over here. And he wanted to know if there's any wiggle room that he could come, try it out, and go back. So he asked my uncle, who was already here, to ask the Chazon Ish. And I don't know if you know, before there was a thing called snail mail, there was mail that took a long time. And because of the length of time that it took to communicate back and forth, so by the time my father received his answer from the Chazon Ish, the window of opportunity already closed, and he couldn't come to Eretz Yisroel. He didn't come to Eretz Yisroel, and whatever. Life moved on in the direction that it did. But the letter which he received from his uncle, a quote from the Chazon Ish, was, "Tell your brother to come. If it's nogea for him to leave, we'll discuss it then." Very open-ended answer. Now, obviously, if my father was a yeshiva baruch at the time, if he wasn't going to be learning in Eretz Yisroel, he was going to go back to America. He was already close to shidduchim age. All the main reasons. There was another reason which is discussed in the Gemara called Parnosa. I don't know if you people have heard of that, but there are all those reasons. All of those reasons were definitely hovering in the back of his mind. And if he would have asked me, I would have said, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it, especially if you only come and test it out. But for some reason, the Chazon Ish didn't say that. He said, come. Now, there are many reasons we could guess as to what the Chazon Ish really meant, but this question is important. I'm going to read the Rambam. We'll start from the Rambam. Also, you're not allowed to go. You're only allowed to go if you're going on a round trip ticket. You're not allowed to go on a one-way ticket. So this is very strange. The Rambam, if we're learning Iyun over here, the Rambam made a group, and then he made something outside the group that he included it in the concept. So it seems that Schaira and the first group are not the same thing. Okay? You're not allowed to move to Chutz La'aretz unless the situation is dire. We'll just leave it at that. And then the Rambam ends off. V'aval pi shemuter lotzes in those situations. Fascinating. Midas Chasidus, Eino Midas Chasidus, Sharei Machlon v'chilyon shtei Gedolei Hador hayu. Machlon v'chilyon were two Gedolei Hador. Mupnei tzara Gedolei yatsu, v'nischayev kliya lamokum. Now, I have difficulty translating this Rambam. It's not a Midas Chasidus, and if you don't do the Midas Chasidus, you're going to be punished by death. That's basically what the Rambam said, right? They were Gedolei Hador, they didn't do the Midas Chasidus, and they were wiped out. So Rabbi Zachariash, what does it say in the Rambam? Is it mutter or is aser? It's mutter, just the price is quite heavy. Just leave it at that, right? That's what the Rambam says. So, and this is a maramokum for many times that there's a halachic question. Someone says, so what's the halacha? The halacha is not necessarily the answer to a question. The halacha is a direction, is an aspect of the answer. All right. Next. The next line in the Rambam is a important line from my perspective. Gedolei Chachamim hayu menashkim al tchumei Eretz Yisroel u'menashkim lavoneho. They would kiss the ground when they came to Eretz Yisroel. U'mizgalgalim al afro. V'cheinu omar ki rotzu avodechas avoneho v'safora yechonenu. Now this is a fascinating concept. Ecstasy or reverence? What are we talking about? That's what they did because they were excited to come to Eretz Yisroel. Why would the Rambam tell it to us? And I think it's clear the Rambam is telling us something about our attitude towards being in Eretz Yisroel. Eretz Yisroel is a holy place. I heard from my Rosh Yeshiva, should be well, that he remembers, we're talking about in the early 50s, Rav Avigdor Miller came to Eretz Yisroel, and he brought back from Eretz Yisroel a stone, and he used to keep the stone in his pocket, and from time to time he would take out the stone and kiss the stone. Just for those who would like to know, in history he goes down as the rabid anti-Zionist, just to put him in proper perspective. But he would kiss the stone because Eretz Yisroel, it's a Kedusha. The person's buried, the minhag is, father had in his desk prominently his dirt to be buried in Eretz Yisroel dirt, because the minhag and all over, people are buried with a piece of dirt from Eretz Yisroel. Eretz Yisroel, the offer, the sand, the rocks, it's all holy. It's not for naught. And I remember when I descended the plane the first time, just sharing with you my personal experience. For some reason, it took me a few transatlantic trips to get used to it. The crispness of the air and how you see is different in Eretz Yisroel than it is in Chutz La'aretz, at least in America. I don't know, in England it's just always foggy. But in America there are places that it's clear also. Anyways, but it's different, and a person feels that they're in a different place. And I remember when I put my foot down on the floor, you're stepping on Eretz Kaddish. And Baruch Hashem, we had the schus to come to live in Eretz Yisroel. But, a home is a home is a home. And you can have a messy bedroom, and you can have messy dishes and pots in Eretz Yisroel, just like everywhere else. So we need to reinforce in our lives the Kedusha of living in Eretz Yisroel. And what does it mean to not live in Eretz Yisroel? I'm not right now discussing the mitzvah per se of living in Eretz Yisrael. When is one obligated to move to Eretz Yisrael? That's not the subject. I'm talking about leaving Eretz Yisrael. You're here. You're muchzik in Eretz Yisrael, and you're walking out of Eretz Yisrael. So, I'm going to start with a few marmakaimis. And the subject which I'm discussing is how do we value, appreciate living in Eretz Yisrael. Let's start with something simple that we know. Every Dalet Amos day, you walk in Eretz Yisrael, so you're Makayim a mitzvah. What about the Himalayas? Don't think so. There's any Ma'amar Chazal about that. I don't recall. So why are you giving up that mitzvah? If you have a good reason, you have a good reason. If you don't have a good reason, so then there's a question. Do you believe or you don't believe? Or it's not important to you. And if it's not important to you, that's why we're here today, to reinforce that it should be important to you. Now, I'm not discussing right now the impact of living in Eretz Yisrael on a person from a religious vantage point. In other words, I'm not right now discussing the social aspect of the power of living in Eretz Yisrael. I'll take a look around over here, and I'm willing to say that I believe that most people over here forgot that there's a day called Sunday. In other words, we know that there was a day called Sunday, but that there is a day called Sunday, most people forgot. And not only that, not only do we forget there's a day called Sunday, we're aware that there's a day called Erev Shabbos. So it's where we live, and this is just like a small piece of the cultural, spiritual aspect of living in Eretz Yisrael, which is, so I'm talking about the etzem. What does it mean to live in Eretz Yisrael? What does it mean for a person to move away from Eretz Yisrael? What about even for a short time? So I'd like to discuss some of the ideas, but you see clearly the Rambam considered it important to live in Eretz Yisrael and to have this attitude. I would like to discuss the Marit in Ksubis. Says not like Tosfos in Avodah Zarah. Tosfos in Avodah Zarah says that one is not allowed to leave Eretz Yisrael except for those aforementioned reasons that the Rambam says. The Marit says basically for any mitzvah, any tzarech gadol, a person is allowed to leave Eretz Yisrael. And not right now, but you hear to kaveya the halacha. I'm here right now to discuss what it is that we're talking about. When I came to Eretz Yisrael, the first time that I went to Tiveria, I was made aware of two halachic things about going to Tiveria from Yerushalayim. At that time, there was no such thing as Kvish. The only way you went to Tiveria was Derech Habika, and they didn't have, Gandhi wasn't around yet, that Kvish. And there were two things that I was told. One is that when you go to Tiveria, there's a piece of time that you leave Eretz Yisrael, and you should be aware of that. Think about that. It's about 15 minutes on the highway. That's at least questionable if you're in Eretz Yisrael. And second, when you go into Tiveria, if you're a Kayan, you're not allowed to go on that road because it goes over Kvarim. And I was here in Eretz Yisrael a very short time, probably 3 or 4 months when I made this first trip. And I was thinking about Kol Tza'adeha, whatever you do over here is very impacting on your religiously. Everything you do has some kind of a significance. You can't, I remember at that time, you can't buy fruit wherever you want. I'm going to come from America, you could buy fresh fruit, you could buy everywhere, that's not a problem. I don't know about nowadays, but in those days, that's the way it was. Here, a person is has to straddle the line of mitzvahs al kol tzad v'shal. And that's part of the beauty of living in Eretz Yisrael. So, should one, halachic question, halacha l'maisa, if I have a choice to go to Tiveria today, should I go through Kvish 6 and avoid going out of Eretz Yisrael? or may I go Kvish Habika and be out of Eretz Yisrael for a fleeting amount of time? It's a question. It's a real question, meaning to say that, yes, this is something that one should take into consideration. I didn't say, someone asked me, Rabbi Zachariash, there's only one, if I want to daven on my flight to America and have a minyan, the only way I could do it is if I go first class, because that's the last seat that's left on that flight. Am I mechuyev to do it? I'm mechuyev to do it, but it's a question. Right? We're not discussing the halachic aspect, we're discussing the values that are relevant to this thing. Okay, so I'm going to just share with you some of the marmakaimis on this issue. The Shevet HaLevi discusses going to the outskirts of Eretz Yisrael, going to Eilat on vacation. Now, I would like to share with you a conversation that a friend of mine had with Rav Shlomo Zalman. This friend of mine actually comes from South Africa, and this is probably Tavshin Lamed Tes. He was here and he was learning Kol Torah, and they were learning Gittin. And in Gittin, the Gemara Daf Zayin discusses the boundaries of Eretz Yisrael. And he asked Rav Shlomo Zalman, am I allowed to go to Eilat for vacation? Now, Rav Shlomo Zalman wasn't sure exactly what the question was. Here we have a bocher from Chutz La'aretz that wants to know if he can go to Eilat for vacation. So he wasn't sure if he was asking if he's allowed to go to Eilat for vacation for tznius reasons, or he's asking him if you're allowed to go to Eilat for vacation because you're leaving Eretz Yisrael. So Rav Shlomo Zalman was dan him lakaf, you could figure out yourself. And he said the following statement: there are poskim that say that Eilat is part of Eretz Yisrael and you should be choishish for it for Shviyas. Therefore, it's hard for me to say that it's also to go there for vacation. Now, there is some discussion in the earlier poskim, but the accepted opinion, and halacha l'maisa, I don't think there's anybody who's really choishish for any place under Yad Tvasa. I'm not right now going into the map, that it's part of Eretz Yisrael, and this goes so strong as it's a davar poshet u'makubal by all poskim except for Chacham ben Sion Abashol, that a Jew who finds himself in Eilat on Yom Tov Sheini has to hold 2 days Yom Tov. The only exception to that I know of from the poskim that we generally follow is Chacham ben Sion, and that's not because he disagrees l'halacha. He has a fascinating chiddush in Hilchos Yom Tov Sheini. I'll just share it with you because it shows how sometimes you think what you're hearing is one thing, you're actually hearing the exact opposite. The halacha is the reason why a Ben Eretz Yisrael and Chutz La'aretz has to hold 2 days Yom Tov, or at least fake holding 2 days Yom Tov when he's in Chutz La'aretz, is so they shouldn't come to Machlokes. So Chaver Tzion says, that that's true in a place that the people who keep Yom Tov hold it for 2 days. But if they're only holding it for 1 day, even if they're mistaken, but the Gezerah doesn't apply because there's not going to be any Machlokes. So even though they're wrong, but if the community over there holds 1 day, you're also allowed to hold 1 day. So what does he hold? He holds unequivocally, you have to hold 2 days there. But it doesn't make any difference. In other words, somebody from Eilat would have asked him how many days you have to keep, he would have said 2 days. But the guy who lives in Yerushalayim that asked him says you're allowed to hold 1 day there. That's called Ibcha Mistaver, right? The exact opposite of what one would have, common sense, what one would have thought. Actually, I would like to discuss a question that I've toyed with. I've been asked by people, I would like to go to the Alps. For some reason, there are no Alps available in Israel. Not only that, presently there's not even the Hermon available in Israel. But Echshahu, I want to go. Nafshi choshka ba'Alps, and I want to go. Am I allowed to go to the Alps? So If someone were to ask me, Rabbi Zachariash, I would like to go and see the coral in Eilat. So, you have a choice to see the coral in Eilat or to see the Alps. So, according to Reb Shlomo Zalman, better see the coral in Eilat than the Alps because it could be you're in Eretz Yisroel. Whereas the Alps, I don't think that there's any tzad that we're getting there in the near future. Anyways, so there's even a halachic aspect to it. Now I'd like to share with you what Moshe Feinstein writes in a tshuva. This is a fascinating tshuva. There's a concept that a person on Sukkos, if he's a holchei drachim, is potter from the sukkah. Okay? Says Rav Moshe, that's only if a person is going to do something purposeful. But if you're just a holchei drachim because you like driving around, that doesn't potter you. You know, a guy got he's in America, he's 16 years old, he got his license. What are you doing, what are you doing on Chalav? I'm driving. Okay, where are you driving? Driving, you know, right? That's why we have global warming, because of these guys. Anyways, so he says, well, I'm driving, so I'm parted from the sukkah. So Rav Moshe says there's no such thing. It has to be, and this I'm not quoting Rav Moshe's mashal. He says, let's say a guy enjoys sleeping outside in a sleeping bag. So that's what I enjoy doing. So comes Sukkos, and right next to his sukkah, he pulls out his sleeping bag and he goes to sleep. So this is what I enjoy. What do you tell him? Get into your sukkah, right? That's what you tell him. Well, what are you doing out of here? What do you mean? This is what I enjoy. So I enjoy driving. That doesn't give you a heter. It has to be you're doing something purposeful. And therefore he says that a person who's on vacation and he's going on what's called a tiyul, which this is what we're going to discuss a little bit today, he's going on a tiyul, is mechuyev in sukkah. The guy next to you in the next room, who he's going to visit his parents, he's pater from sukkah. He's going on the same road, same itinerary, but he's doing something purposeful, and therefore he has a heter of holchei drachim. You are doing something purposeless, therefore you're not called holchei drachim, and therefore you are mechuyev in sukkah. This is what Moshe writes. Tshuva number 1. Tshuva number 2 is a shiluv about leaving chutz la'aretz to go on vacations and to go and see certain things. Let's just use the example of the Alps. You want to go to see the Alps? Is there any justification for a person to leave Eretz Yisroel to go to see the Alps, or to not eat in the sukkah if he's going to the Alps? This is what Rav Moshe discusses. And Rav Moshe more or less says the following concept. There are things that people do that are purposeless, and they do them all the time. I'm going to just poke fun at society and mention one of them. Reading the newspaper. I can promise you, I can tell you what's going to be in tomorrow's newspaper, what's going to be in the newspaper in 3 days. In 6 days, probably I'd have to read something, in advance. But more or less, nothing major is going to happen. At least in normal times like that. Even today, I don't think any major is going to happen. We'll bar the particulars of today's and this week's travel plans for certain people. But nothing really is going to happen. And yet, people have to read the paper. Why? Because. Okay? We'll leave it at because that's what people do. That doesn't make it purposeful. Doesn't make it purposeful. How much money are you willing to pay to read the paper? So there's a guy that I know that works in the financial world, and when he comes to Israel, he has to buy the Barron's, he has to buy the New York Times, and it costs a major investment in this country to buy those papers. And then one day he said, no, I'm not going to buy it. It's a bad investment. So I said, you mean the other days it's a good investment? He said, no, I didn't say. But today, it's not worth it. Okay, but the bottom line, okay, let me just get to the Kuda. Rav Moshe writes that if you would spend a lot of money to go to see the Alps, so that it has become something purposeful in your life. It's something you're going to talk about. There's not express it. Talk about it, it's a major happening, and therefore, perhaps it's permissible. Now, the halacha is, and this is important, the halacha is, in Hilchas Chalamoid, those who have learned Hilchas Chalamoid are aware of a fascinating halacha. One is not allowed to take a haircut on Chalamoid unless the person has come off the boat. That's one of the 4 possibilities. And that's only permissible if the person came off the boat for a legitimate reason. And one of the reasons that it's called legitimate is if he went for a dvar mitzvah, or if you went letayel, then you're not allowed to take a haircut on Chalamoid. And if you went for schoira, even the harvocha, that's called legitimate, or to visit one's friend, which is a mitzvah, either of those 2 things are enough. So there are those poskim that say that if you have something which is in that regard, that possibly is a big enough of a heter to leave Eretz Yisroel. However, the question is, if somebody says, and I'm going to leave it, I didn't realize the time went so quickly, but just leave it, the question is, I could go to Tzimmer up north and it's going to cost me 1,000 shekel, or I can go something a little bit more exotic, I'm going to go to Kafrisen and it's going to cost me 1,500 shekel. It's going to cost me 700 shekel. It's going to cost me less. In the scheme of your vacation, is that justified? Could be, according to all opinions, it's not justified. It has to be that there's a significant reason. There's some things that people they need to have X, Y, or Z for their vacation, and that will make it permissible more than what's called the tile, even though we call it in the Vrit the tiul, but the tile means something which is non-purposeful event, and therefore a person should realize the chol hapochos, aside from the fact that there are mitzvahs that you're going to lose out when you're going to be in Chutz La'aretz, there could actually be an isser of leaving if it's for anything more than a very, very short amount of time. Okay? I will say as follows, just on that subject, without getting involved. I don't want to get too involved in it again. There's a great machlokes between the poskim on this issue as to how much a person is allowed to be makel and going to Chutz La'aretz. By and large, I'll just say that the poskim are of the opinion that if there's a justifiable reason, one is allowed to go. Now, again, this question of what's a justifiable reason is something which depends on the person, depends on the situation. There are those, and there's a doctor that I know in Yerushalayim that is a very sought-after doctor, and every once in a while he crashes, so to speak, and he has to get away. So he decided he's going to Switzerland and he's going to rent a house at a deserted, something over there, and just be able to chill out. And there he was, and somebody walks by and says, "Oh, Dr. So-and-so, I've been meaning to ask you a question." He left. He came back to Eretz Yisroel. He said the whole vacation was destroyed. And that's it. So he needed to get away, right? It doesn't happen. He can't do it in Eretz Yisrael. He can't even do it in Switzerland, right? And I'll probably go to Oz. It's probably safe over there. No one's going to bother him. But saying, so you have situations where there are things that are necessary. And now just complicate matters on these questions. There are different kinds of questions all over halacha that have to do with these kinds of factors that have to be factored in. A person wants to go and do a medical procedure, and he wants to go to Chutz La'aretz to do it, because the medical team is better there than here. is that justifiable or not? So if somebody would ask me that question, I would ask him the obvious: what procedure are you doing? In other words, I would like to ask mechila in advance from all dentists, but not necessarily does a tooth have to be filled by the world's best dentist. Nothing personal, and just like that's not. I don't think anybody would disagree with that subject. There's certain things that become more sophisticated and more difficult, and nowadays, and this is a fascinating, important thing. I'll just share with you a medical emergency piece of information. I had a meeting with a bunch of doctors in Har Tzofim recently. I was in the cardiac ward, and I became privy to a piece of information which could save somebody's life. All operations done in the cardiac ward, whether in Karem or in Har Tzofim, the team in the other facility watches it. So really you have two teams watching the operation, and the nafkamina of where you go because of that is very minuscule. That's according to what they were telling me, because both are good doctors. So this one may be a drop better, but the question is, so you're going to chance it and go another 15 minutes to a better facility? Just think about what we're talking about. You understand? And this has to do with, in all, what I say, in many areas of medicine, much of the, from what I've read, and the internet has made available to people information on a global level which was impossible even 15 years ago. There are people who have consultations with doctors all over the world, and when they have a protocol that has to be put together, how they put it together, where they're going to put the IV in is not such a big part of the picture. Right? The technical tipul is almost non-professional in some of the most sensitive of things which are done. Sometimes it's the surgery that has to be done exactly. And I just spoke to somebody who had to go to Chutz La'aretz for a surgery, and I asked him, the good doctors here in this country, this operation, how many times do they do it a year? And in New York, and it was over 10 times the amount. So but you have to know everything. How much does that 10 times make a difference? In other words, a person who has driven in his life 1,000,000 miles, and the person who's driven 2,000,000 miles, he's still not going to be a good driver. In other words, the extra 1,000,000 is not going to make the difference. It depends on each thing into itself. But a person has to know what it is, the value of what he's doing. But if there's a justifiable reason, it seems based on these poskim, some point to this Mishnah Berurah, this point to the Marit, Rav Avigdor in his tshuva is a fascinating tshuva, which in its iyun, he finds that the Isser, even in leaving Eretz Yisroel for a period of time, if it's a short period of time, then the Isser is almost non-existent. In other words, his opinion, I would imagine, if you would ask him if there's any reason to go Krishesh and not to go Derech HaBika, he would say there's no reason.
What's a short period of time?
Oh, so that the longest short period of time that I've seen the poskim brought down is a month, and others say a day. This is already where you're going to be going. But again, all these things apply to if there is a mitzvah of being in Eretz Yisroel. So, and this I would like to ask a question, and this question is based on Rabbi Kiva. It's a fascinating question. If I live in Eretz Yisroel, and I'm going to start with the following question. There's an ongoing fight in my family between my children and myself where I live. I say I live in Yerushalayim, my kids say I live in Beit Shemesh. So I'm not really sure exactly where I live. Everybody has what to say on the subject. So I live in Eretz Yisroel, and I go to America for 3 weeks. Am I Mekayim mitzvah Shivas Eretz Yisroel when I'm in America? Because that's where I live. Where do I live when I'm in America for 3 weeks? Does mitzvahs Yeshivas Eretz Yisroel have to do with being there moment, or it's where that you live? Do you understand the question that I'm asking?
Where your furniture is.
Do you live here, or do you live in your house? You're here right now, right? But you still don't live here. Halavai. But Deval, you don't live here, right? Asher Yesher Eisecha. No, it's a person where a person lives is where his residence. That's where he lives. So perhaps, and this is Rabbi Kiva discusses this question. A person who goes to a market, he went to the fair. When he's at the fair, is he makayim the mitzvah of mezuzah on his house? I'm not living in my house right now. I had actually this question asked to me just now, and I'll share this with you. It's a side issue. Someone went to America for serious cancer situation, but they just went for treatment. Now, unfortunately, I have enough experience to know that one never knows what that means. So after they went, somebody told this fellow, maybe you should have the mezuzahs in your house checked. So he had the mezuzahs checked, and sure enough, there were some mezuzahs that were problematic. And the person who was in charge of the house when he was away approached me and said, "Should I put the mezuzahs back on, or now the kosher ones? Should I put them on now?" I said, "Who's in the house?" He said, "Nobody." So you're putting a mezuzah into a house that nobody lives in? Is what kind of mitzvah does that? Or does he live there? So what do you mean he's coming back in 2 weeks? There ain't no such thing as temporary and no such thing as permanent. I don't know. Medical situations, they tend to be fluid. We don't know really when the person's coming back. So the question was, should the mezuzahs be put back now, or should they wait until the person returns and is really living there? Is he living in his house? I'm asking you, what? I don't think so. This case, I don't think it's like Rabbi Kieger's case. It's a person who goes to America in such a situation. Unfortunately, I know of many people that got stuck there for a year, for 2 years, right? It's not, even if Rabbi Kieger's case is true, that when you're here right now, you still live on Chov Dolev, but when one goes to America for medical treatment, it's a one-way ticket.
He knew for sure it's coming back in 2 weeks.
Right. Right. If you know for sure, but the nature of the question is different. So you have to know each halacha has this thing. So again, a person.
If he hadn't taken down his, let's say there hadn't been a Shashvat.
Okay, I'm going to answer the question. That's Rabbi Kieger's question. That's Rabbi Kieger's question, and the answer to that is no. And I'll just share with you an answer. This question is this. The way that you're asking the question, I would say the source of that is a tshuva written by Rabbi Vassal Stern. You wear tzitzis, right? Many people make their tzitzis. When you make the tzitzis, people do not make tzitzis while they're wearing them. They put them, whatever, they tie them onto something, and then they make the tzitzis on them. That's 100% mutter, because just halacha is to put on tzitzis. You're not over anything. It's 100% mutter. 100% mutter to put on a beged of arba kamfas and affix to them tzitzis. Mutter gomer. That's exactly what the mitzvah is. When you wear a dalet kamfas, to put tzitzis on them. That is the way it's supposed to be done. That's the lechatchila way to do it. And maybe you have to not breathe in between. I don't know exactly how, but that's actually the proper way to do it. So the question is, we hold that tzitzis is chayvas gavra, not chayvas mana. So when you put the tzitzis on your beged, why isn't it taseh v'leven aseh? For some reason, that question doesn't sound right, but it's an exact analogy to your question. Okay, but we'll leave that for maybe a different share.
it different if you have something that really dramatically changed the quality of someone's life, but isn't life and death?
The question is, listen, let's start. I'm going to, since we're on the subject of Eretz Yisroel, I would like to take issue with many of the greats of Poskim of 50 years ago. And I'm not necessarily taking issue with them when they said what they said. I'm taking issue by people who say that that is still true. Travel almost doesn't exist nowadays. There are people in Ramat Beit Shemesh, I'm sure all of you know people, who work in Chutz La'aretz. There are people who go to Chutz La'aretz twice a month. And this is normal, right? This is normal. These people have 2 houses in 2 countries, and you ask them, where do you live? So say, who's asking? Right? You know, it depends why you're asking. And it's not really clear where they live. Now, there are some poskim that said in regard to the halacha of how many days Yom Tov one has to keep, if you own an apartment in Eretz Yisroel, so then you can hold 1 day. I don't believe that that is an indicator at all of where a person lives. And I'll tell you something. The guy who owns an apartment in Israel also owns an apartment in upstate New York, and he also owns an apartment somewhere in Florida. And so where does he live?
Well, he lives in Florida, so
No, I'm just saying, you understand? So now the question is that because you have, there are many people like this that have 2 residences.
Where's the family?
What?
Where's the family?
So these people usually, their family is in America, and they come here for Chagim, they come here for vacation, it's a vacation home. They don't live here. In no way do they live here.
There's people who are going 2 weeks up and back with their families.
Oh, yeah, so those people, if you ask me, they live in Eretz Yisroel. Those people live in Eretz Yisroel, and for work purposes, they're forced to live in a dormitory called their house in America, so to speak. You understand? But no. I'm not. But it used to be that if you had a house in Eretz Yisroel, it was a claim of living there in allegiance. It wasn't the vacation home. But this the indicator, it does not indicate the same thing today as it did 50 years ago. So, in my opinion, whether that was correct then or not, it's not mutkan nachon to the mitzvahs of today. It doesn't mean anything at all. And when the people come to, we live in the generation that people go to America for a Hanukkah party. That's where we live. Not to England, to America for a Hanukkah party. So it's very, very, So the bottom line, where the person lives, a person is here, and a person where he's residing, a person really only lives in one place, so to speak. There are some people who live in 2 places, and chayim shelhem eino chayim. In other words, they're not really settled. There is something lacking in their being settled, but that's a nature, and it can be that there are people who live in, there's somebody I know in Chutz La'aretz, a divorced marriage. It's both people had previous marriages and they got divorced, and both have prominent businesses in their cities, and they live in their respective cities, and every other Shabbos they go to the other person's city. They do this for 15 years already. They're happily married. This is the world we live in. In other words, if you would tell this to somebody 70 years ago, they wouldn't understand what we're talking about. But this is reality. This is reality.
Some people happily married when they only see one day a week.
Those people were 70 years ago too. But I'm just saying the idea of mobility and permanence have to be understood differently than the IT nowadays. Anyways, but the point over here is what's called a fascinating idea. A person wants to make more money. I make adequate money. I want to make more money. So a person is allowed to go to Chutz La'aretz for Parnasa, is one allowed to go for more money? Okay? So the Mishnah Berurah paskins that a person is allowed to go for more money. And he brings a pasuk, and this is with a limit. This has actually this is sourced. And for different things, a person is allowed to do different things. I know it's one of the things which is discussed over here. The Gemara says, and I'm going to share this with you because it's a stira. The Gemara says that the people in Eretz Yisroel, when they would be malave their chaverim who lived in Bavel back to Bavel, they would be makpid not to go over the border to Chutz La'aretz. So there are those that want to bring a raya from over here, that even for a very short time, there's also an Isser. And the detractors say, no, that's a midas chasidus, like we saw in the Rambam. In other words, there definitely is an advantage of staying in Eretz Yisrael. Whether there's the fact that they only went until Akku and they didn't go over the border doesn't mean that it's Asr. It just means yesh b'zeh inyan. It doesn't have to mean more than that. Now, as far as going on Shabbos into water, lidvar mitzvah, there it says to visit your friend, it's not enough. Unless your friend is a bigger Talmid Chacham than you're going to learn. And in this halacha, it says to visit your friend because of making a good social environment. It's enough of a mitzvah to allow it. So you'll see, even in this idea where Chazal recognizes visiting somebody else as a dvar mitzvah, not for all subjects does it have the same level, threshold, to make or break the barrier. So that is an important nekuda. When a person is going to Eretz Yisrael, the message that I would just like to share is that going to Eretz Yisrael leaving Eretz Yisrael is a shayla. And not only is it a shayla, it's a person is missing out on a mitzvah. According to most poskim, living in Eretz Yisrael is at least a mitzvah kiyumis. So you're not having that mitzvah. So if somebody would ask me, and I'll use this as an example. When I was a bocher, this was a very common question. I'm going to play ball. Am I allowed to take off my tzitzis? I will just say the following. I haven't seen people who go swimming with tzitzis yet. I don't know why not. You've seen it?
When I was up all night.
Okay, that could be. But by the yam, that doesn't work, right? But anyways, I'm just saying, one isn't obligated to. And I believe when there's a justifiable reason not to be wearing tzitzis, it's not even what's called, the Gemara calls be'idna derischa. The Gemara Menachah says that a person's not wearing tzitzis because he's finding an excuse, we'll use that term, to not be Makayim mitzvahs. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, when he's annoyed, will punish the person, even though he didn't do an Aveira. But a person has justifiable reason, that's understood. Justifiable reason. Okay? But a person who's looking to do mitzvahs, it's something else. So here we're discussing a person has the opportunity to take a vacation and do it in Eretz Yisroel or to do it in Chutz La'aretz. And I'll just use this as an example. There used to be this place called Gush Katif. I don't know if you people ever heard of it. But this place, Gush Katif, was supposed to be a very pretty place. It was a very nice vacation place. A person could go there, or he could go to some place which was in Eretz Yisroel. Both were in Israel. But one is in Eretz Yisrael, one isn't. So one should factor into the fact that he's even if it's mutter, is that what you want to do? Is that what you came to Eretz Yisrael to live here for? So that you should have to negotiate your vacations to these places. All right.
Could you feel like going to Eilat?
I think it's worse, if I'm not mistaken. According to some, it's like a lot.
Does the union of Kaddish Rishon and Kaddish Sheini apply to this?
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. Don't recall the answer to that question. Let's close that subject. I was asked to speak about an issue which is a very important issue. We live in a jungle. There used to be Kehilas and Kal Yisrael, and each Kehila did like their Kehila did, whatever. Those daven Ashkenaz, those daven Sefard. Right now you're in a shul that's a disaster. This shul used to be Sefard, then it became Ashkenaz, and it has smatterings of this and smatterings of that. Which is fine. I'm not right now, what I'm saying, but this is born out of confusion. This is born out of the fact that we're in a melting pot, which this idea didn't exist in Europe for hundreds and hundreds of years. You had father, grandfather, great-grandfather all lived in the same city, and everybody had the same minhag, everything was clear. And here we live in a country that is, the only difference in here in places like the United States is here people are much more militant about that which they do. But the bottom line is that we have a jungle of minhagim, a mumble jumble, and the question is, what is binding, what is not binding on people because they live in Eretz Yisroel? This was a question that I was asked to speak about.
It's probably because it's a particular shul you're in.
No, in Eretz Yisrael, is there such a governing thought that in Eretz Yisrael, Minhag Eretz Yisroel? So I'd like to say over two things. My Rebbe Rav Moshe Halberstam, I heard this from him dozens of times. Rav Moshe Freund, who was one of his Rebbeim, was a Satmar Chassid. The Satmar Chassidim, they never heard of Shkia. They only heard of Shkia Shnia. They never heard of Shkia. And he used to say as follows: never did he daven mincha before Shkia, and never was he mater a hefsek taira after Shkia. Now, speaking about confusion, right? That's so for certain things were accepted clearly. I don't believe even the Satmar Rebbe, when he was in Eretz Yisrael, he didn't do malacha after Shkia, though he did in America. Okay, because this was more or less, I believe that with almost 1,000% accuracy, Shkia is Shkia in Eretz Yisrael. I will say.
The story is that he had a lot of pressure to not do
It could be. So I'm going to explain to you part of the background behind that. There are few Chassidim in this country that actually live in a bubble. One of them is like Tzans, that they live in a bubble. There are different Chassidim live in a bubble. Most Chassidim have a matriculation into the rest of society also. There was a baby who was supposed to have a bris on Shabbos. This is about 3 or 4 years ago, and the baby was yellow. The male came to check the baby Shabbos morning. We checked him on Friday, and he wasn't. His color was out of the question. So the father actually went out of town. He went back to where his chassidus is, and the male came at, I think, 30 minutes after Shkia. I'm not sure, on Saturday. I don't want to say, I'm not sure what day to call it. On the day that the morning was Shabbos and the evening is Yom Rishon, he came around 30 minutes after Shkia, and he saw the baby, and he said, he looks fine, and he made a bris. It's about 4 years ago. This bris was done in Bnei Brak, and the city went wild. A moil of Machal Shabbos. A Machal weekday. What was he Machal? Which Avera did he do? He made a bris on Shabbos, he made a bris on the weekday, he made a bris at night.
the Either it was Shabbos and that was the right day.
I understand, but the halacha is, it's not exactly Mimana Shach, because the halacha is, if it's Ben Hashmoshes, the halacha is that the bris is nitche, even though there's a tzad that it's Shabbos. It's a Mishnah. Now this moil went with his Kehila's minig that Shkia is not Shkia. No, we're not discussing that minig. It's a legitimate minig. That was actually the minig of most places in Klal Yisrael. I'm not discussing the legitimacy of the minig, but Zelo Rechpo. And it caused a very large ruckus at the time of Bnei Brak. Most things, in my opinion, there is no clarity that it's uniformly accepted one way or the other. There's a sefer written by someone named of Gelis about 85 years ago of Minhag Eretz Yisroel, and at that time there still were more or less a bit of uniformity, and I would just like to make something clear to people aren't aware of. In Chutz La'aretz, Minhag Ashkenaz does not say En Kelokeinu during the week. In Chutz La'aretz, Minhag Ashkenaz does not say Baruch Hu after davening. Here in Eretz Yisrael they do. So some people think the reason why is because we're closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and there's more Kedusha going on. It has nothing to do with that. That could be true, but there's nothing to do with it. There was an attempt about 400 years ago to make an Ichud Kehilas and have everything be homogeneous. And they took Minhagim from Sefard and Ashkenaz and pooled them together in order that all the shuls, all the things, everybody should be actually doing the same thing. It didn't really work so well, but part of it was that in Ashkenaz that they should say El Kelkeinu, and that's the reason why on Mondays and Thursday in Minhag Ashkenaz they don't say Baruch Hu, and in Minhag Sefard they do. Is because the Ashkenaz said Bishleimer during the other days when there's some value to get it for the guys who missed it. But on Mondays and Thursdays it's not necessary. These are the way the Minhagim were actually formulated. And this happens to be on my mind because I was yesterday at a simcha and they davened Ma'ariv and it was exactly a minyan, and the person afterwards said, should I say Baruch Hu? I said no. And someone said, why didn't you say Baruch Hu? I said, because the minig is, these are people don't know, the minig is if it's not a minyan kavua, and it's everybody was there, you don't say Baruch Hu. That's the minig. So what do you mean? But Chassim they always do. I said, of course, because the Chassim daven Sefard. So no, you have to know even, this is not even an argument, this is, you have to know really where you stand. So this is part of the disaster of that we live in. We don't even know the sources of what we're doing, why we're doing what we're doing. And I just mentioned on the subject of living in an Eretz Yisroel, or this kind of an idea, one of the things which I didn't change here in this shul is to say the Yom. We say the Yom on Shabbos after Shachris like nusach Sefard, not like nusach Ashkenaz, which says it by Musaf. And if one looks in the Poskim, the obvious thing, which is the difficult question, is that the Yom was the Shira that was said on the Tamid. So why is it that Ashkenaz says it by Musaf? Seemingly, Ashkenaz is doing the wrong thing. So I'm not going to get involved in this question. There's a fascinating hezbollah on this given by Rav Hutner that has to do with the nature of Korban Musaf and Shira. But the reason why I left this minig the way it was is because that's the pashtus. If I would be making a shul, I would do it Ashkenaz, and I would do it like minig Ashkenaz. But I didn't feel that it was necessary to change. When the way I was doing it, it fits according to the Pashup shot. So that's why I left it. I didn't change it. But there are many fascinating explanations to these changes in the Minhagim, and a lot of these things have to do with different dinyanim al pi Kabbalah, what the symbolism is. And halacha l'maisa, there are things, and I'm going to use this as a statement which I believe is under great controversy. Everybody knows that the yekas wait only 3 hours. That's not like a suffix if that was the minig. That was the minig. Everybody agrees. Somebody asked Rabbi Eliyashiv if there's any reason for him to wait 6 hours, because he's a yaka and his minhag is 3 hours. So I said, what do you mean? You have to wait 6 hours. He says, what do you mean? I come from Germany. So I said, so go back. He said, here in Eretz Yisroel, the minhag is 6 hours. And whether you like it or not, it doesn't make a difference where you came from. He meant it very seriously, go back to Germany. Not because that wasn't an insult. He meant to say that here that's what the minhag is. There are many who disagree. And I'm going to share with you a piece of information, and this is my understanding, this is Rabbi Eliyashiv l'shitosai, on how we create what's called a minhag hamokom. I will say as follows. I come from America, and I saw a metamorphosis that took place, and I believe that what I'm saying is correct. If it's not correct, someone can correct me. I don't think that there is a mahadrin hechsher in America that's not makbel on Chol Yisrael. Is that true? Well, what? No, I'm saying I don't. What's called a mahadrin hechsher, right? A mahadrin hechsher, that's not makbel Chol Yisrael. I don't think anything which is not trying to. If you'll ask, I'm not right now discussing halacha. I'm discussing the facts. What happens? No, it's OU is not trying to be a mahadrin hechsher. They're trying to be a kosher hechsher. They're not. That's not their agenda. No, that's not.
Same as KLBD.
All right. Okay. Fine. That's fine. Fine. So, a person who is a mahadrin. Now, a person lives in Eretz Yisrael. All the hechsherim are makbel Chol Yisrael. I don't think that there's a hechsher that's not makbel Chol Yisrael. From the Rabbanut and up. Would you say that that's the minhag in Eretz Yisrael? It's just that's the way it is. So a lot of times there are things which happen that create minhagim that aren't real minhagim. In Minhag Eretz Yisroel, on the question of Chadosh, so he says, when he gets to that, Sif and Shulchan Aruch discusses Chadosh, he said there is no minhag in Eretz Yisroel to be machmer or to be mekel on Chadosh, because we only have wheat once a year, and there's never a shayla of Chadosh. So there is no minhag because they don't sell snowshoes in Israel. You understand? Just like it's not negeya. There was no minhag. It's only relevant after, like 50 years ago, when they started importing stuff. So who was importing? So the importers already, they imported stuff that was yashan. But does that mean that there was a statement made by the Gedolei Hador on the subject? As far as I know, historically there wasn't. The facts on the ground, are all the kashrus organizations machmer on it? The answer is yes. And I'm going to tell you more than that. I believe that there's not one person here that has eaten in Eretz Yisroel meat that's not called glut. I don't think that exists. Either it's glut or you wouldn't eat it. No, I didn't say that there isn't anything else.
There's a lot of a lot of meat.
I said, but the people over here in this shul.
People eat mahadrin.
Right, so mahadrin, but mahadrin doesn't necessarily mean glut. There were in many places in Europe and the United States, you could have mahadrin without being glut. Those are not the same subject. But because of we have kashrus today, there are many things that get lumped together, and that creates an illusion of a minhag. That minhag is not necessarily a minhag; it's just a practical way of, the company does it the way that they can do the most volume, and you do this, and then that's what it ends up being, that people are makbid on it.
There's a minhag in Eretz Yisroel that, at least in some places, that the children and the kura don't follow the mace.
Yes.
Now, this is a new minhag in Eretz Yisroel.
A new minhag?
It's a new minhag in Eretz Yisroel.
What's called new?
It was born from Europe a few hundred years ago.
Okay, that's good. I've done research on it too. Yeah.
But
Many-
there's stories from 300-400 years ago. People, children went to the next. Does that one makes it a Minhag Eretz Yisroel?
So I'll answer that question. All of the Minhag Yerushalayim Chaver Kaddishas instituted it, and what normally was that people were buried by the Chaver Kaddisha that were from their ilk, and therefore it became accepted. Now, not only that, I'd like to share with you something about this minhag. Before anybody scoffs at that minhag, I'm not right now discussing right and wrong. That's not my place even to discuss right and wrong. There's a mitzvah d'oraisa for a son to bury his parent. This minhag disregarded that mitzvah d'oraisa, and it was sanctioned by Gedolei Hador. Before you attack it, you should be aware that this was under discussion, and it was concluded that this is the better way to go, and the person should be aware of that. Now, when a person, I would like to say something. People feel, I just want to discuss this nakuda. I was just asked yesterday, somebody had the following question. They're toch shana, and they're making a chasana, and they wanted to know, is it proper to be machmer and not go to their child's wedding? Now, the answer to that question, if we were learning straight halacha, is 100%. Who says you could be mekel and go? The halacha is an avos not allowed to go to chasana. That's not being machmer, that's following Shulchan Aruch. Now, let's take this another step. However, the Gedolei Hador will start from the Chidah and onwards. They said that if it's going to mar the simcha, the chassan and kala, so then one is permitted to go. Now, at that juncture, now that it's permitted to go, should one go? Should one take that kula, or shouldn't one take that kula? Now we have over here a question of the mitzvah gedolah of simchas chassan b'kala. Now, in other words, the equation has changed. The halachic question has changed. So when the person says, should I be machmer? So it's always a question, are you being machmer, are you being mekel? Who says what you're doing? Who says what you're doing? So your son is going to get married, your daughter is going to get married with a sourpuss face. Why? Because you're being a machmer? Where's your parental responsibility? I didn't say what I told I'm just saying these are questions of, so there are reasons why this was instituted, and it was more or less accepted. Now there are people who come and they say, I'm not part of this kehillah, right? One doesn't have the right to say that. And I'm going to use this as an example. Rav Moshe Feinstein writes in Chuvas something that is not necessarily accepted by many people. There are those who daven nusach Ashkenaz and those who daven nusach Sefard. That's fine. You can do whatever you want. Rav Moshe says if you're davening in a Sefard minyan and you don't do tachnun together with everybody else, you're over an Isser Doraisa of what is this going to do? An Isser Doraisa. Because you want to do your minhag. How important is your minhag? Everybody holds your Yotze Tachnun if you do it this way or that way. This is not a halachic question of do or die.
Are you talking about Yom Tov?
No. Forget the Yom Tov. That could be you don't have to do it. Moshe has different true. It could be you don't have to do the Yom Tov. But if you say Vayemer David before V'urachum or after V'urachum, so Moshe holds in a Shalav and a Sidoraisa. Both are minhagim that are valid. He's not discussing right now the validity, but if there's a tzibur that's doing something and you're not doing like the tzibur, you could be in jeopardy. These concepts are very important. So what's going on? I'm willing to say that in and I'm going to make the statement because I believe it's true, and since I happen to be the Rav of the Shul, I would like to make the statement. Asur liyot kazeh matzav, that somebody who's a Sephardi comes into the Shul and he says Kaddish, the Rabbanon, and he puts in an extra line. That is not the minhag in the Shul. It's a wonderful thing. We don't say v'yachzach pakune. Now, some people end up by accident saying v'yachzach pakune, and it happens. I know I've davened for the Omer in a Sefard minhag, and I forgot. That could be a slip of the tongue, but something which is not the minhag of the makom. I'm going to use a strong English word. It's crass and disrespectful and inappropriate. It's an abuse of a makom kaddish, and it should not be tolerated. I'm saying this very strong because there's a shul, it has a minhag. It's not a shtibel here. If one were to daven in what's called a shtibel, where it's taka free for all, I don't believe that Rav Moshe would say that there's lysis gaiduru. I don't think the two people doing the same things of anything. You have to have some kind of a base. And I'm not right now discussing the validity of one over the other. La'olam al yishane odam miminhag hamokom. It doesn't say in Chazal lo yishana miminhag hamokom. It says la'olam v'lo yeshiv bein ha'oimdim v'oimdim bein ha'yoshvim. That means if everybody's saying tachnun and you're standing, you do it against the Maimer Chazal because of your minhag.
In a shul, it's not a Yekish shul. You don't have everyone sitting at the same time you're standing. Even if they're sort of in the same.
I'm going to be very frank with you. By the time we get to tachnun, everybody's at the same place. What? I think it's quite obvious when you're davening in a shul that tachnun is said right afterwards, and somebody's saying tachnun 2 minutes later. It's clear, you know exactly. He's doing a different minhag. You don't have to be a genius to figure that out.
Because of those goes away, is there no place that I know of that there's a consistent minhag about whether to stand or sit during prayer support, and it seems to be accepted. That's the minhag that you can do one of
I'm going to answer your question as a litvak. Okay? There are two places in davening that there is this kind of a free-for-all. One is by Kriyas HaTorah, and one is by Chazar Sashatz. Some people stand during Chazar Sashatz, some people sit during Chazar Sashatz. And he was a very big Talmud Chacham, a litvak, that when he became old, he was mater neder on one of them, on the one that it was a chumrah, and on the one that it's midina, he wasn't mater neder. So somebody asked him, why aren't you being mater neder? He says, why should I be mater neder? It's a halacha that you have to stand. The reason why I'm not standing is I'm a chayla. So I'm pater. The one that's a chumrah, that one I have to be mater neder on. It's the exact opposite of what common sense would say, right? So, but the bottom line is that there are things which are takanat kavua. There are those that do it this way, those that do it that way, and there are many places. We'll use this as an example. Mizmal Asayda, there's accompany by in certain kehilas to sit, and accompany most kehilas to stand. Okay, but not but nobody knows what you're doing. Then that's fine. That doesn't stick out. And this is Nageya also, according to Moshe, by the Nanuim on Sukkos. Many places can disagree with Moshe on these situations, but I just want to bring to attention, there's not only this question about in Eretz Yisroel, there's a question even in Chutz La'aretz. In most places, still today, and I already see it's getting watered down, when I was growing up, in shuls where people wore tefillin on Chol Hamoed, they never walked into the shul, they only wore the tefillin in the Ezras Nashim. No such thing as walking into the shul, or the other way around. all people in the shul wore tefillin, and the people who didn't wear tefillin, they were nezes nashim. But there was no such thing as a mixed crowd. I've already seen that has changed. Oh, all right, stop over here.
So when does the head of the issue about taking Shabbos yearly? That's very issue. Is it not back against
I'll tell you. As far as I know, there. Again, this Rav Eliyashiv is the one who he has allegedly has said that. I don't believe that there really is a minhag as he said that it was. This is what was done. I'll just quote on this subject Rabbi Weber, the Rav of Neve Yaakov, was a very close Talmud of Rabbi Eliyashiv. He said all the people from Chutz La'aretz that did it can continue. And being that there's a halachic question, since it wasn't done here, so Israelis should not start to take on a kula which wasn't done until then. Early Shabbos. Now, I'm not right now discussing why. There's many discussions, many aspects of the question of early Shabbos. But that's the bottom line. But again, I'm going to end this subject with the following statement. The Minhag Yerushalayim is that there is nothing more, I'm going to try to be as politically correct as I can when I say, nothing more at a wedding besides a drum. Only one instrument. Or perhaps only a drum. That's also a machlekes. I'm not going to get involved in that. And I get involved in what's called one instrument. I have a friend of mine that Shlomo Zalman told him, "You're an American. You have no shaykhis to Minhag Yerushalayim." And Itaka was American. He has no shaykhis to Minhag Yerushalayim. He lived in a bubble, and in no aspects of his life did his community integrate into Israeli society. And he wasn't the only one, or Shlomo Zalman wasn't the only one who held like that. The Scheinberg held like that also. That Bnei Chutz La'aretz that are living in their bubble, I'm being very specific, I'm not really getting involved in what's called in their bubble, they're not mechuyev to this idea. Whereas the people who live with the general society, they do. Now, what ended up happening is that the children of these people ended up going to regular yeshivas. Does it go by? The parent or the chassan? So I will end this shir with this following joke. This is a joke which allegedly happened. I don't believe it ever happened, but if it did, it's really a good joke. There was a very frumma guy that got married to a very rich girl. And this very rich shver had to make his chasna in this super duper fancy place in New York. And the hechsher over there wasn't as super duper fancy as the place. We'll just leave it like that. And the chassan tells his going to be father-in-law that you can't use that caterer because that caterer isn't acceptable. So the father-in-law said, "I'm paying for the chasana, and I'm going to use the caterer that I want." So the chassan didn't lose his grounding. He said, "Fine, but tell your daughter that she shouldn't fast the day of the wedding." She said, "Why not?" He said, "Because after she's married, her husband's not going to let her eat." Have a good night.